There's nothing like watching a great movie on the big screen with an audience the way it was meant to be seen. The energy in the room is infectious. At Cowtown Movie Classics, we partner with the finest institutions in North Texas to bring you the glamour and thrills of old Hollywood with the proper historical context. Each screening features an all-new discussion with a world-class film historian, artist, or special guest, hosted by me, Ryan Bijan. We believe it's important to recognize how the icons and images of yesteryear inspire the entertainment of today. Cowtown Movie Classics. We make the old new. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ryan Bijan, host of Cowtown Movie Classics. And when I think of the great quintessential holiday classics of the 1940s, two films immediately come to mind. From 1946, of course, there's director Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. And for me, the second film that comes to mind is the movie that we're about to discuss tonight. From 1947, it's the original Miracle on 34th Street, starring the wonderful Maureen O'Hara, John Payne, a very young Natalie Wood in one of her earlier roles, and as the definitive Kris Kringle in my book, Edmund Gwenn. Joining me tonight to talk about this film is film historian and veteran of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, Mr. Randy Haberkamp. How are you doing tonight, Randy?
Great, Ryan. Thanks for inviting me. This will be fun.
So what was your earliest memory of seeing Miracle on 34th Street?
I think it was probably not until college because I was in a small town where you didn't get a lot of reruns of things like that. And the stuff that we got tended to be older, not newer, not necessarily better. But when I got to college, I remember seeing, especially for the first time, It's a Wonderful Life. And I think they ran Miracle on 34th Street about the same time. So I was being introduced to a lot of those classics much later than I wish. But it had a great effect on me because I thought it was so charming, and also because I thought it was really an interesting way to um, you know, you have this whole conflict from your childhood of, how to deal with Santa Claus. And I thought this was a really great way of making it seem very benevolent and very organic, as opposed to, oh, dad lied, whatever, something like that. But it was, and especially the whole Macy's parade thing, having grown up with that, and seeing that as the tradition, I think that was something that really appealed to me and made it seem, like a very special film.
Oh, I can imagine, but it's interesting that you didn't discover these movies until you were a little bit older, because I always imagined them, or I saw them growing up as these perennial Christmas classics that are just in constant rotation on television.
They may have been, well, not It's a Wonderful Life, because there was some, story rights issues with that kept it off of the screen for a while, and, that film also wasn't really that big a success when it came out. It's a Wonderful Life really came along later, and like I said, when I saw it in college, I was absolutely stunned that I hadn't seen it before, and you know, there wasn't in my neck of the woods, there wasn't a lot of classic film, things being run. If they were late at night, and they tended to be different kind of films. I did see March of the Wooden Soldiers as a young kid, and so, there were exceptions to it, but it was really sporadic, and so you didn't have the same access to these older films that you have now, which is why it's so disturbing to me when people haven't seen some things that I think they should have seen, because everything is right at your fingertips. And of course, I always like having people see things on a big screen. We just ran Shop Around the Corner at Old Town Music Hall here the other day. And I mean, the audience laughter and the warmth that that film generated, and that whole Christmas spirit thing was just really so wonderful. And so I, really encourage people to see these films that way, because it's so easy to take them for granted when you just see them playing in the background at home.
Oh, definitely. And I can imagine like Los Angeles certainly has a greater hunger for those types of films in a theatrical environment. Miracle was released through 20th Century Fox. It was a major motion picture for an A-list studio. How did this project come about?
What I find interesting about this, having been at the Academy, is that both Valentine Davies and George Seaton, who ended up writing and then writing the script, George Seaton wrote the screenplay, Valentine Davies wrote the original story, and George ended up directing it as well. Those two gentlemen knew each other in college, and this was a project that Valentine Davies, in I think around 1944, 45, was saying to himself, "Oh, everything's so commercial with Christmas. This is kind of disgusting to look at all these people just swarming over, trying to buy things in stores. Where's the spirit of Christmas and all that?" And so he came up with this story, and he showed it to his friend George Seaton, and who loved it and had some ideas and started writing a screenplay. And they ended up pitching it to Fox, and it was a project that people liked. But again, this It's a Wonderful Life hadn't done that well. There had been a couple of other Christmas movies, but there wasn't that sense of oh, we got to have our Christmas movie. And so they got this film made, and everybody thought it was a cute little film and all that. But one of the things that always tells me a little bit about classic films is when you look at the original trailers. And the thing that about Miracle on 34th Street, I don't know if you've seen the trailer. It's online.
I have. Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it's just hilarious because they did a 5-minute trailer, which was about double what they normally were. And you have this situation where they released the film in June because Zanuck thought that June was a bigger box office month, so they'd get more money. And, Christmas in June is just like, what is going on here? But at the same time, it didn't have Christmas in the title. They didn't call it Christmas Miracle. They didn't call it Kris Kringle or some of the other things that they had talked about. They came up with Miracle on 34th Street. And when they're advertising it, they don't show any scene from the movie. They don't show anything Christmas. They don't even mention, anything other than that Edmund Gwenn's in it, but not what role he played. And they have this, it all starts out, and you see the beginning of the movie and the title and the stars. And then you cut to the screening room where these movie executives are all sitting, and the guy who's clearly the head of the studio portraying Zanuck, even though he's not called that, says, this is all wrong. What this you're calling this thing, hilarious, romantic, and delightful. There can't be all these things. This is you're overselling this. Nobody's going to buy this. And he goes out into the studio and runs across Rex Harrison. And Rex Harrison says, "Oh, yeah, I saw the screening. You should go see it. It's really great. And I think men will really love it." And then he runs into Ann Baxter, and she goes, "Oh, yes, I did see that movie. It's really terrific. It's one of the best films of the year. And I think that women will love it." And he's like, "What?" So he runs into Peggy Ann Gardner, who calls it groovy, which, I had in 1947, that was like, really? They're saying groovy? And so anyway, the trailer then says, "Oh, it's hilarious. It's romantic. It's, exciting, all this kind of stuff." And again, no Christmas, nothing. So here they are releasing this film in June. They're selling it on the stars. They're selling it on this warm, romantic, wonderful film. but nothing about Christmas. And so then there you are, people going into the theaters and discovering, wait a minute, this is all about Santa Claus. So, I thought that was really amazing. And what's even more amazing to me is at the same time that this film was being made, you had Bishop's Wife being made. And Bishop's Wife has this whole thing about an angel and the Christmas tree and all that kind of stuff. And Sam Goldwyn even stopped production and started over. He changed the roles of Cary Grant and David Niven, and he had all these things. He spent a lot of money fixing or thinking that he was fixing the film, and he probably did. But at the same time, it ended up coming out much later. And so by that time, the whole campaign with Miracle on 34th Street had happened. So what did Sam Goldwyn do? He did a trailer that did not talk about Christmas, that did not show you any scenes from the movie, and that had his 3 stars talking about what a wonderful experience they had making this movie on the Goldwyn lot. I mean, it was just like the same. They copied the marketing plan and in the trailer of Miracle on 34th Street. So you have this very interesting, evidence of how the studio felt about these films. It's just really amazing to me, and frankly, they're 2 of my favorite trailers of all time because they are so unusual and because they're so different.
Oh yeah, no, certainly. And I'm curious too, did the summer release date, did it help or hinder Miracle's success at that time?
I think it helped because it's came out in June and people went and heard and it got really good reviews. People loved it, and I think one of the reasons that people loved it is because I think there were a lot of people who were kind of agreeing with Valentine Davies that Christmas had become commercial. There's a really I don't want to say dark because It's a Wonderful Life was dark. But
Mhm.
I think Miracle on 34th Street has a cynicism to it that the way they answer to that cynicism was something that people found reinvigorating and kind of charming and reassuring that, yes, Christmas was a good thing to celebrate. And even though buying gifts was commercial, at the same time, there was love and affection behind a lot of these things. And I think also it kept this film alive for 6 months, which was pretty unusual. So it was a big moneymaker for the year. And the whole I think the Macy's and the parade and all of that, and that was an annual event already. So people were aware of that nationally, even though they weren't necessarily from New York. So I think all of that really helped Miracle to survive in a way that a lot of other films hadn't.
Right. It's interesting you said that the film played for about 6 months, so theoretically it was still in theaters by Christmas time.
Yes, yes. So I think that helped really impress people. And then, of course, shortly after that, it was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. I mean, when was the last time a Christmas movie was nominated for Best Picture? I don't know, but it certainly has been a while. And Bishop's Wife was nominated too the same year. So it was really a year when people were laying into, the idea of Home for the Holidays and all of that after having gone through World War II when the Macy's parade was canceled, and so suddenly you had this, reflection of the quality and ended up winning 3 of the 4. It didn't win Best Picture, but it did win for Edmund Gwenn playing Santa Claus. He was the only nominee in the acting categories, and famously said, when he got the award, I guess I really do believe in Santa Claus. So, and then you had both Valentine Davies for original story and George Seaton for original screenplay getting awards as well. But even funnier than that is that the other writing award, there were 3 at that time, was for Bachelor and the Bobby Soxers. So the serious movies, which often get, all the awards, didn't get any of the writing awards. And Gentleman's Agreement, of course, won Best Picture and was very well thought of, and also came from Fox. But at the same time, it was very interesting to me that Miracle had that kind of Academy attention, and it really is a very solid screenplay and a really wonderful writing. And it's kind of an odd situation too, because it was written as a story, but it was never published. And then they made it into a screenplay. And then, Valentine Davies liked what George Seaton did to the screenplay so much that he ended up, refashioning it and writing his story as if it was the screenplay. And Fox allowed him to publish it as a book for Miracle on 34th Street. So the book came out, and it's been republished. This is a facsimile, and they reproduced the whole thing. But they added a very interesting forward where Valentine Davies is really talking about how wonderful it was working with George Seaton. So he approved of this final version and preferred it. And, which is not always the case with writers. You don't always have that, oh, the director did a horrible mangling of my work. In this case, they worked together and were both very happy with the outcome. So
Yeah.
it's nice to know that there was a good feeling behind the scenes in this film, as well as in the film's response.
Oh, definitely. Well, as we know from Rex Harrison, it's a great motion picture, and Ann Baxter. It's a wonderful film for men and women, and it's a great experience overall. But what would you say to our audience if there's anyone who's never seen Miracle on 34th Street? What do they have to look forward to?
I think they have a way. It really is a great film, because I think everybody, the holidays come around, especially the older when you're a kid, of course, Christmas takes forever, right? And it never comes, it never comes. And when is Santa going to come? Or when are we going to open the presents? Whatever your tradition is, or whatever your gathering is, even if you don't celebrate Christmas, it surrounds you. So I think the thing that really makes Miracle a special film, and I think It's a Wonderful Life does this too in a very different way. I think it makes the holiday season something where you realize, okay, this is really about looking at what life is all about, and what family and what friends and what support is all about. What do human beings mean to each other? And I think that's a very uh, reassuring thing. I think it's also something that we do need to be reminded of on a regular basis. And maybe once a year isn't often enough, but I think, again, it's really something that, regardless of how cynical you are, I think it can thaw you out a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Randy, thank you so much for your time. If you're in the audience, please stick around after the film so you can hear the rest of our conversation. Without further ado, from 1947, it's the original Miracle on 34th Street. Like you said, this movie has it all. It's a wonderful, wonderful film to revisit. One thing I think is interesting is earlier you mentioned how Valentine Davies felt like, even at that time, Christmas was being too commercialized. It was getting away sort of from the spirit of giving, and then the celebration of Christ, what have you. And I think it's interesting, like, that's a conversation that's been had even in my lifetime, of the kind of mass commercialization of the whole thing. But they were having that conversation 80 years ago.
Yes. And, I think that during the Depression, it was probably something that the discussion was quite different, because people just didn't have the ability to over commercialize things. And I think after the Depression and after the war, there was this hunger for, really splurging. And I think maybe people overdid it, or people started to, forget, what the reality had been, and what was real. So I think it's partly timing with all of this stuff. I mean, again, we forget how close the Depression was to World War II. which was part of the impetus for it starting, as the Depression was a worldwide problem, not just a United States problem. And so I think that all the people that were lost, all of the sacrifices that were made, were very strong. And I think there was also a resentment when suddenly you had people kind of, pushing each other around in the stores and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a natural reflection of the times. And I think that, the interesting part of it is that even though it was 80 years ago that Miracle on 34th Street came out, it still feels fairly modern because you do have this. I mean, what really makes it modern for me is the cynical child. And of course, she's being raised that way. But Natalie Wood is so terrific in this movie, and she's got to be the best bubblegum chewer ever. So I don't know if she got the role for that alone or if they incorporated that more into the film because of her ability. But it recurs quite a few times, and but it's the perfect way to have that cynicism with this kid blowing a bubble at the same time it's a kid. You would never have an adult do that kind of thing. So it's a very childlike way of expressing, I'm in my own little bubble here. And I think that there's the parade and watching it. They're not watching on television yet, but it's outside the window, so it has a very television-like feel. The way the cameras are covering it, and I think it's still very relatable in the way. And when you go into Macy's and all the crowds are going on, all you have to do is go down to farmer's market right now in the Grove, and you can experience the same thing. So it's definitely got that timelessness in the presentation and the way you know Edmund Gwenn deals with his the doubt that people have in him, not to mention the way the quote unquote store psychologist, whatever he really is,
Mhm.
deals with it. I just love all those touches and his little ticks where he is pulling at his eyebrow and the questions that Edmund Gwenn asks him about, his home life, which, he immediately rebels against. And then you cut to his secretary, and his secretary is doing the twitch. There's just all these little visual things in the film that I think are really very amusing and also very telling about the characters. And it's very organic in the way it's constructed and the way it's directed. So there's still work and also it's shot a lot in close up, and so you have these beautiful close ups of these characters, and whether they're happy or sad, you're right there in the emotion of the film that they're going through at the time, and great character actors thrown throughout the film, William Frawley and Gene Lockhart and people like that who have the ability to just with a little glance or a little reaction, give you exactly what's going on with their character, and it's just again really warm and amusing, and at the same time very believable.
Absolutely. And I mean, the film certainly works on multiple levels. I'm sure I've read this at one point, but I think you can even look at the film as an allegory for the concept of, let's say, atheism versus belief versus faith. So there's a lot you can read into the story. And I think it
Sure.
does work on multiple levels.
Yeah, it doesn't say you're stupid if you don't believe this or that, but it does say, it basically in the end it pretty much says, hey, we have to have a moral responsibility, and this is what keeps us in touch, and you have to have faith, whatever faith may mean to you. But at the same time, the cold hard facts are not the only way you can go through life, because you'll end up cold and hard.
Oh, definitely. Now, you've lived in Hollywood for a few years. Did you ever get to cross paths with any of the actors from the film?
Yes, I did get to meet Maureen O'Hara. She was quite elderly at the time, but she was and she was her memory was not as sharp as it had been, but she certainly remembered Miracle on 34th Street, and she certainly remembered The Parent Trap, which is my other childhood film that she was definitely someone I knew from that. Uh, and which is also another cynical film where you have this kind of bridge with the twins pulling all these routines between the children and adults. So she was very proud of her work and very happy to see people, and still had that fiery red hair. And it was a big kick to meet with her. Um, a lot of the others died much too young. Even
Mhm.
Natalie Wood was. I was living out in Los Angeles by that time already, but it was, I didn't run into her before that time, which was
Mhm.
very sad. But it's definitely, and again, having worked at the Academy and seeing that Valentine Davies was a president of the Academy, I'm like, Valentine Davies, who's that? I did not know at the time, and when I looked up that he had done Miracle on 34th Street, I'm like, wow, that's impressive that this guy, made it to the uh, presidency. There's a rumor that because he died in 1961 during his presidency at the Academy. And there's a rumor that he died laughing in a meeting at the Academy. That's not true. He died in his home in Malibu. And he did, evidently, according to his housekeeper or whatever, he did die laughing at a joke. He had a stroke from, laughing too hard or whatever, which is kind of an ironic thing. But at the same time, he was president at that time, and he had been president of the Writers Guild before that, so he was definitely involved in Hollywood, social and political aspects of the business, and very well thought of. So it was nice to, and again, like I said, George Seaton had been president, so there was this sense of these college buddies, making their way through Hollywood. So it was nice to have a more personal story behind some of those characters and some of those filmmakers.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I'm curious too, do the earlier drafts of Valentine's story still exist in terms of, because I know you said he rewrote it to match the finished product a little closer. So how different was that earlier iteration?
I think that uh, George put a lot more humor into it, and I also think he made it somewhat more direct. You can see a little bit of it. One of the things that I find curious is the book starts out with this whole scene where you have the Edmund Gwenn, Chris Kringle character at the home that he's staying at. And you have this whole scene with him and the doctor as the opening scene. And of course, the George Seaton movie version starts at the parade with you're following the Chris Kringle character down the street as he's walking toward the parade, having no idea where he came from. And he just happens upon this guy who's playing Santa in the Macy's parade, and the Santa is drunk, and this guy is who looks like Santa Claus, but that's all you know about him, is appalled. And he asks who's running this thing, and this woman finally says, oh, it's this woman over here. She's, and he meets the Maureen O'Hara character, Doris, who comes over, and realizing that this guy is drunk and that she needs to fix this situation because she's in charge, she convinces him to play Santa without realizing that he thinks he's Santa Claus. So all of this is just stumbled upon. And I think that just that alone is like such a huge change. If you started that movie in a hospital for the aged, which is what they call it in the film, that's kind of a downer right off the bat. Whereas this
Mhm.
allows you to discover, as does the Maureen O'Hara character, discover that this guy really thinks he is Chris Kringle, and that, oh, what are we going to do about this? We're too deep into this situation. And I think it's much more organic and much more inviting as opposed to that. So I think there were probably changes like that that really, made the whole thing work. And, George Seaton was a really practical director. He wasn't a fancy, showman, but he knew exactly how to place the camera and he knew exactly how to get the actors into their roles and he knew how to make a really entertaining film. So I think that was a really good match. And I think that the changes were uh, subtle, but definitely very much focused on making the movie what it needed to be for the best audience reaction. So,
And I think they certainly succeeded in that. So I believe in 1994, 20th Century Fox, of course, remade the film with Richard Attenborough as Kris Kringle. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, are you a fan of that version?
uh, well, I mean, if it's the first one you see, it's probably fine. At the same time, I don't know. It doesn't have. There's something about it being from 1947 that allows you to accept the nostalgia and the quaintness of it a little more. I don't. It's hard for me to say because for whatever came first is usually my favorite. Especially if it's a good film and it's considered a classic.
Hmm.
I prefer the original. It's just like, when we screened, Shop Around the Corner, it had been remade as You Got Mail, and with Shop Around the Corner, you have this little store where it's this little family, and you have people in each other's faces, seeing each other, and there's personal interactions, and it's a much warmer story than a story where you have about 2 people who are on the internet and each running their own company. It just has this separation that I'm like, "Oh, I don't know that that has the same, warmth or the same, connection,"
Hmm.
it's and then, the Tom Hanks character ends up, uh, being a better businessman and putting this little bookstore out of business. I mean, that doesn't really say Christmas in the same way that this group of employees all getting along and the boss coming back and the boss and the employees feeling more equal. That's
Hmm.
not quite the same thing. So it's interesting how in modernizing things, sometimes the films become more practical in the way they're approached, and practicality is not really what you always want especially in a Christmas movie.
You know what? I'm glad you bring that up. It's an interesting thing that I've noticed in this trend. Um, I use Batman as an example, right? You look at the Adam West Batman, he has a cave, he shows up, he's wearing a costume, he's fighting the bad guys. And even in the Tim Burton Batman, it is that to a degree. But by the time you get to the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight, you have to explain, where did the utility belt come from? What are the ears on the bat? Like you have to, I guess audiences have a harder time suspending disbelief, and it somehow makes it more ludicrous when you try to over explain every little detail. It's like, who cares? That's not what the story is about.
No, and you lose the comic book sensibility where,
Mhm.
you told these stories in, like, a few dozen panels, and
Yeah.
instead of having that. I mean, what made the comic book so interesting was the graphic motion and the really impactful changes that happened in each frame,
Mhm.
and, what you're talking about is just smoothing that all out, and it becomes so smooth that, you kind of lose the, biff, bam, wow part of it, you know?
Yeah.
And, so I think that, it's not that I don't appreciate what those films are doing, and in some cases, I think they're able to, go beyond that, but they've all kind of become that way, and because of that, it feels like there's a repetitiveness to it that, um, has lost the, um I don't know, the originality of each one of those comic books. There's a reason why each one of those characters became kind of distinct, even though they were trying to repeat the success of the one before. Um,
Mhm.
sometimes you wonder, am I watching Marvel or DC right now? It's which one, what's going on here? I feel like it's homogenized somewhat, but that's
Oh,
me.
definitely. And I'm a fan of the Christopher Nolan films. I think he's a great director, but it's not so much the films themselves as sort of what they've done to the culture. Now, every type of science fiction or fantasy film, they have to over explain everything to make it seem more plausible. But to me, that just makes it seem more ludicrous. I don't know. That's just where I
Yeah,
stand.
yeah. And you also have this, I think, uh, desire to make things more, you know, there was no question in the Batman TV series on who were the heroes and who were the villains, and that's not
Hmm.
popular anymore. Everybody wants dark villains and relatable villains and dark heroes, and at a certain point, it starts to become, well, why should I care about any of these people if there isn't any difference, or if they're so close in their, approach. Um, so it's something that I understand they're wanting to be more realistic,
Hmm.
but sometimes reality is not really what you want from your entertainment. And so that's why it's also kind of disturbing to me that comedies are so hard to make now and so few.
Hmm.
They're and when they are made, they've become hypersexualized or, just really kind of outlandish. And again, I'm not a prude by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, uh, I love 40-Year-Old Virgin and some of the things that were going on in that film, and there's other comedies too that I've really appreciated. But, when you do sit in a theater in El Segundo, which is not the LA audience, it's a very different audience. It's much more of a normal, movie-going audience, and you sit and listen to them laughing at this film from 1940, you realize, wow, this doesn't really happen anymore. I don't hear this kind of response from a movie, and, you know, that shouldn't be the case. Um, I mean, uh, it's always interesting to me when I go to a classic film and it has a whole different response. Even silent movies where people are just shocked at how entertaining they are and how involved they can get with them. And uh, you know, and the other great part of it is the running times aren't nearly as outlandish because, as you say, in explaining everything, it means you need 2.5 hours or 3 hours to explain something. And, the conciseness of some of these classic films really make me yearn for the day when directors just told the story and got on with it. So I think there's some backlash to that going on. And I think the irony is film was so expensive and digital is you just let the camera roll forever and it doesn't really change much except your edit time. And I think there's just a lot more stuff that gets left in movies that should have been left on the cutting room floor and probably would have made the film better.
And maybe that's another reason why, unfortunately, movie theaters are dying is because people don't want to sit for 2 hours and 47 minutes for just a regular drama or action movie. It's getting a little bit too self
After
indulgent, I think.
after sitting through 47 minutes of trailers and commercials, and it's you don't
Yeah,
mind the trailers so much, although the trailers now are also, you don't see a trailer like you see for, it's the one, for, Miracle on 34th
Miracle.
Street
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Bishop's Wife, where you don't have the whole film ruined for you. You see something that's clever and unique and that makes you wanna see the film, and so the art of, even advertising films has kind of, shifted quite a bit. It's really rare for a really great marketing campaign to get you to go, "Oh, that was clever, I wanna see that now."
That's
So,
true.
yeah.
Although, to be fair, I've seen a lot of trailers from the 30s, 40s, and 50s where they literally are just showing you the whole movie with all the
Sure.
spoilers and twists.
Sure. No,
Yeah.
when recently we ran Psycho, and I showed the Psycho trailer, and it's 6 minutes of Alfred Hitchcock leading you through the sets of Psycho and
Hmm.
and every time you're in a place, he'll say something, goes, "Oh, well, of course, shouldn't get into that," and so you're like, "What's he talking about?" Well, of course, having seen Psycho as many times as a lot of people have seen it,
Yeah.
you now know everything he's referring to, but the trailer itself is absolutely hysterical. If you saw that right before the film, it still doesn't ruin your expectation of the film 'cause he's misguiding you all over the place, but at the same time, if you have seen the film, it's really hysterical, and
Oh,
so that's a
yeah.
case where he was smart enough to figure out a way to do it without telling you the whole film, or the whole story.
Well, I know. I think that's an example of very clever marketing. I think that's a pretty brilliant trailer. Another one you're talking
Yeah.
about. But going back to Miracle, it's interesting how you say now audiences want things that are more uh, psychologically ambiguous and dark, and you can't really tell who's good and who's bad. It is interesting though how in the 1940s, World War II not only gave rise to the birth of, let's say, the kind of the seedy cynicism of film noir, but also a rise in these more optimistic family pictures like Miracle on 34th Street, some of the other ones you mentioned. And it is interesting how, like, audiences wanted a little bit of both at that time.
Oh, yeah, and I think that was not only the audiences, I think it was the directors and the actors. I mean, face it, I was just watching a Roy Rogers Western that was that's a Christmas movie in a very strange way. I had never seen it before, and it is stunning how, clear cut the villain and the bad guys and the good guys are. And, it's kind of fun, but it's also kind of a bit much, and definitely not, the type of film that you would see made today, certainly very often. But I think the thing that, distinguishes what you're talking about is that, when you look at it, Casablanca, for instance, is a really dark movie. I mean, there's people, fighting by singing the Marseillaise in a bar, where you realize it could turn into a fight any minute, or that people could be arrested or killed. And you have this love story where, you have this couple that had a past thing that they're trying to not reignite, even though it's very strong with them. And then you have the end of the movie where it's not necessarily the happy ending. And frankly, it doesn't get more, gut wrenching than that. But I think the way the film is constructed, it allows you to buy that as being the right thing. And so I think there's still a morality and or a human, um, decision, that needs to get made in those films, whereas I think, too often it just gets so dark that you're just kinda like, "Wow, that was depressing." And
Hmm.
it's not that we need to go to a film to be Pollyannaed or anything like that, although that can be fun too in its own, way. But I think that, uh, you do want a sense of some kind of, uh, balance or a sense of reassurance, uh, because I don't think you wanna spend money to be depressed, you don't go to a therapist because you want him to tell you how rotten your life is. You want
Hmm.
the therapist to help you become better, and I'm not saying movies are necessarily supposed to always be therapy, but in a sense, I think there is that expectation that, it will be a positive experience or uh, you know, uh, a way of time well spent. So
No, no, I definitely believe that, and it's interesting too. You mentioned Casablanca. Well, as you alluded to earlier, "It's a Wonderful Life" is a story about a man contemplating suicide. It doesn't get much more darker than that, but
no,
we do,
and
yeah.
again, I think that that was something, and it's Jimmy Stewart, no less, and that was a very different role. They had never seen Jimmy Stewart in a film like that before, even though, in, Shop Around the Corner, he is being very, uh, kind of bossy and struggling with his masculinity and this woman who was like challenging him and all that kind of stuff. There's definitely a more sensitive side to him. He's not being the hero there as much as he is being human and
Hmm.
trying to wrestle with his humanity. But, something as dark as, Jimmy wanting to jump off a bridge, that was not, typical, and nor was that typical for a Frank Capra film. And of course, Frank Capra had made the Why We Fight series, so he and, all of those filmmakers who, were involved in World War II, even when they were making films about, the war or, shooting films, in the war like George Stevens, all of those filmmakers came back and their work changed significantly after the war. And in some cases, it was a very positive thing. In others, it really was a struggle for them to, get their films made. And I think that with It's a Wonderful Life, I think that's also something where the cynicism of that film was a bit too strong. It was also released by RKO, which didn't have the same strength as MGM or Paramount or some other films would have. I think there are many reasons why that film may not have succeeded beyond, what the film itself was. But I think people rediscovering that film in a more cynical time in the 60s and 70s and especially in the 80s when home video came out. I mean, it just proliferated everywhere. And when the rights got fixed and it started airing on NBC regularly for a while, that film became much more well known. And I think people embraced it because uh, everybody's had, I don't know that everybody's been suicidal, but everybody's had a dark time in their life where they're really questioning, who am I? What am I doing? Why am I doing this every day just for a paycheck, whatever the situation is. And so I think that, and there are times when your relationships aren't as strong or whatever. So I think that film has a lot of again, reassurance and believability. And whether you believe in angels or not, you hear a bell and it clicks you back into, oh, okay, I've got to play to my better side, so to speak.
Oh, yes, definitely. Well, Randy, do you have any closing thoughts on Miracle on 34th Street?
Um, let's see. Well, the other thing I loved about it is that at that time, and I think that this helps the film a lot. They were shooting on location, and that hadn't been very prevalent, and so the reality of that parade and the seeing them involved in it and, just the New York nature of the film feeling very organic. I think that helps it keep a modern sensibility. And yes, they were using some, rear projection and things like that, which looks really good. Had really skilled people doing all that stuff. I think it was really great. And again, the cast members. Ever Thelma Ritter's first film. How much, Lord, what she did to the films of the '50s with, her cynicism and her, New York accent and all of that, it's just really, a pleasure to see her she was nominated for 6 Oscars over the course of her career, never won, but 6 nominations she didn't start acting until she was 45 in films, and this was her first role, so, that's pretty amazing. She's like one of those characters that every time you see her, you just smile. So it's wonderful to have that kind of talent, involved in a film like that, especially on such a, yeah, and Natalie Wood too. just a great child actress. I mean, there's just expressions that she gives that are just so on the money. It's just amusing as everything. So anyway, no, a nice little package, perfect for Christmas.
Certainly. Oh, certainly. And you know what? I was just reminded of this. Have you ever come across, working with the Academy, did you ever come across any relics or memorabilia from the film?
No, again, it was the tie-up of the 2 presidents, again, everybody, especially now, everybody expects the a movie to win Best Picture to be the weirdest or the darkest movie, and I mean,
Hmm.
comedy rarely get, Oscars, let alone nominations, and so it's always interesting to see, um, you know, that kind of, who ended up becoming involved in the academy because of what they felt it represented, and it was great to see that those guys were involved and that they, took it very seriously and kept it going, and, you know, it's interesting to see whose papers have ended up there and whose work so there's a lot more to the Academy collections and the library and the archive than I think people are aware of. So it's great to have some of those things. You can go back and see the shooting schedules and see some of the facts about how something was made. And you know, back in the '60s and '70s, when people were writing some of their autobiographies, there wasn't that access, and so they could kind of just go by memory. Well, you realize that memory isn't always, truth, especially your memory gets shifted a little bit to protecting yourself a little bit, even when you're not trying to lie, you're telling your side of the story. So it's always interesting to get some of those facts, and that's why I love knowing that Valentine's Davies and George Seat got along. Wouldn't it be horrible to find out that Miracle on 34th Street was created by a fight? You know?
Yeah.
And even Maureen O'Hara said it was such a pleasant set and that it was a really she was, of course, had already gone back to Ireland after the war. She couldn't go home during the war, so she had gone back to Ireland and wasn't even really interested in continuing her career, but Fox still owned her, had her contract, so she was forced to come back to make this movie and was, like, all blustery about it until she read the script and said, "Oh, this is great," so she was not known for being a wallflower. She definitely was somebody who spoke her mind, which is part of why she's so good in this film because she's got that, kind of independence that again feels very modern. Here you have a woman executive who's called into this office and everybody else is a man. And so you have this instant dynamic of what she's up against and there's a lot of great stuff in the film that I think is just a matter of timing, and the timing worked out for it feeling timeless. So
And it certainly feels timeless. And again, you mentioned Maureen O'Hara, so I have to bring this up. Maureen O'Hara was certainly one of the queens of Technicolor, and I think of her fiery red hair, the red of Santa Claus's suit, and the Christmas theme. I do wonder if they ever considered making this in Technicolor.
yeah, again, I think it was Zanuck. I think wanting to shoot on location
That would have been
was
harder. Yeah.
yeah, and more expensive. And I just
Hmm.
think Zanuck didn't have he saw this as a program picture. He didn't see it as the one that would be playing, 80 years later. And which is why I think they chose to colorize it, which is a whole nother angle of it. And it's not that the colorization is bad, so to speak, but it's also there again, this is a personal choice. The black and white just feels more, nostalgic and vintage to me and other people, I mean, some young kids would I say, "Oh, black and white," but I think when you watch the film, the black and white goes away, and
Hmm.
you have these close-ups of Maureen O'Hara. She certainly was beautiful in color, but she looks just great in black and white when she's got that camera, close and a beautiful face and very expressive, and, the whole cast is really, not not uh, completely Hollywoodized. I mean, John Payne is a handsome man, but he's also very warm and relatable. And Edmund
Hmm.
Gwenn, of course, is just great as and Thelma Ritter and William Frawley. All these guys, they've got character faces, so it's definitely got a um, all American approach, I think, to the look of the film. So it feels very well constructed, and it's a pleasure to watch it.
Yeah, and as you said, the movie is timeless. So, Randy, I don't know when we're going to put this online, but is there anything you're working on right now, or anything you have coming up you want the audience to know about?
Oh my. Yes, I'm working on a presentation of The Wind, which is one of my absolute uh, favorite silent films, and it's just uh, so visually beautiful and a great film, I think, for people to see on a big screen and to who people who haven't seen a silent film before. I think it is one of those that if you think silent films are Charlie Chaplin and slapstick and comedy and all that, which they are and can be and really great, and people don't really appreciate Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton unless they've really seen it on a big screen too. But when you see a film like The Wind or Sunrise or The Crowd, and you see the visual storytelling and you see it with a music that's appropriate and that involves you, it's just there's a romance and a mysticism about it that I just think is so unique. So I'm looking forward to that.
That sounds very exciting. I mean, speaking of unconventional silent movies, this when as of recording this Wednesday, I'll be presenting The Unknown with the new musical score, and that's
Well,
certainly a treat for people who've never seen a silent movie before.
yeah, it's probably uh, dark is probably an overused word, but I don't know what else to say about it because they're just things that that happen in that film that even though you don't really see anything, the ideas really mess with your head, because
Yeah.
uh, the extent to Lon Chaney's obsession and his whole approach with the solutions that he decides to take are really like, wow, you know? So, and it's again something you're not expecting from, great grandma's time, it's really uh
Yeah.
it's but it's really well done, very, very imaginatively done, and even Joan Crawford in one of her earlier roles is fantastic in it, and Todd Browning, that really I think had a lot to do with his cementing his reputation. Uh, but and of course, coming from MGM, it's really strange. But
Oh,
uh,
definitely. Well, I mean, MGM was no stranger to weird horror subjects later on, of course. But no, I mean, yeah, The Unknown to me, I think that is, and I'm a big Lon Chaney fan. I have Phantom of the Opera statues and memorabilia. I think The Unknown might be his greatest performance.
well, certainly his greatest performance, where you're not depending on the makeup to sell it. Um,
Hmm.
you know, but he had he was a very interesting. Um, I think he had more effect on changing what movie acting was about than just about anybody because the idea that you could have all these creatures and personalities and the darkness of it, I think it was and the visual nature of his performances, whether it was the makeup or his performance itself. He was definitely, it's really a shame that he died when he did. It would have been interesting to see because I think he would have ended up, maybe not because I don't think Universal could have afforded him, but he was who they thought should have played Dracula, and that would have been very interesting. But Bela Lugosi, of course, got his big break with that, and brought a whole different dimension to it. But you had Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff and all those actors who kind of followed in Chaney's footsteps. And it's very interesting to see the influence that he had on, especially the darker side of monster films and even film noir. I think owe a bit of debt to him as well.
Well, film noir and even the world of special effects makeup, just creating these creatures from whole cloth. He was the first to do that, really.
It's quite
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Well, Randy, it's always a pleasure getting to talk with you. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thanks for inviting me. I really enjoyed doing this, and it's great to talk about classic films this way, especially when I really feel that uh, classic films don't necessarily you have to look at what was going on when they were made to fully appreciate why they have survived, and how they survived. And I love trying to give people insights into the film that can give them a more full appreciation of what they're seeing, not because I want to tell them that they're foolish for not liking a film. You have your own taste and your own opinion, but I think it's also helpful if you know some of the things that were going on and who some of the people were and their backgrounds. It just makes it a fuller experience.
Art is not created in a vacuum. It does help to know if you're watching something from 100 years ago, it does help to know, okay, this is why the movie is the way it is. And you can't necessarily judge it by the standards of whatever big IMAX 3D spectacle is coming out now, which is a completely different art form.
Yeah. On the other hand, like this movie, when you have something that works, even though it was made many years ago, it works because there is a timelessness to it, and there is this human thread going through it that we can all relate to. So it's really fun to help people discover that. So
Oh,
anyway, and
de-
thank you for
definitely.
doing that.
Oh, of course. No, I certainly appreciate it. If you're in the audience, I hope you enjoyed tonight's conversation as much as we had having it. Once again, I'm Ryan Bijan. We'll see you next time.